get out of the comfort zone because these people aren't playing games.
9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job.
We're going to organize. Humanity's going to come together. We are swinging muskets here, toe-to-toe with the globalists. They're bloodied. We're bloodied. It is absolute, total war.
Welcome, fellow liberty lovers, and those of you out there surfing and exploring the environs of the interwebs. I'm Alex Jones. This is another edition of Infowars Nightly News, Wednesday, January 25th, 2012. We've got a very informative guest who's been incredibly successful in a grassroots campaign for Ron Paul, getting Democrats and independents to basically cross over into the Republican primary, joining us after the first break. But in the meantime, let's get right into the news. Now, this was just breaking last night, but now we have the full details, and now the Associated Press and others have reported on this. And it's shocking because it confirms everything that we had already basically picked up on and reported on in pieces, but it puts it all together and is so incredibly un-American. But not just un-American. It is tyranny by any yardstick worldwide in history, period. Shock documents, total federalization of police under new Homeland Security mission. Mission creep, DHS agency abandons fighting terrorism, shifts to hiring your local police and taking over every facet of America. And it's all public. And Chertoff and others involved are there making the money. So it's a revolving door of the Homeland Security and Justice Department people profiting in the takeover of America. It is unspeakable. In fact, here's a quote from Aaron Dyke's excellent report that then links to all their own documents. In short, it confirms the intentions of key insiders, including former NSA and CIA heads like Michael Hayden, former Representative Jane Harmon, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, 9/11 Commissioners Philip Zelikow and Richard Benveniste, former National Security Advisor Samuel Berger, and others to flesh out a plan we have already seen developing from an outside perspective, namely to build a domestic Stasi-like force to take over, monitor, and control the population. And they say this isn't about even terror. This is about political control. And these guys themselves are just getting chicken feed to run the program for the big offshore banks that have captured America through fraud, but now want to hold us down. They've gotten good at this with third world countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and Eastern Europe. And they have systems and strategies the IMF and World Bank talk about of how to totally crack down and just jack up food, water, devalue currencies to destroy the economy. And in the next phase, they then consolidate it all. I mean, this is just a race to the bottom and is a manifesto of evil. So I hope that you go read this admission by these arrogant criminals and the declaration of war against real Americans that recognize who they are. This is powerful. I mean, this is big. This is how they're going to implement the NDAA against the American people. And it makes me want to throw up. And it's run by a guy who looks like Skeletor. I mean, Chertoff is like a joke. I mean, if I was a top Hollywood producer and I was casting an evil guy, this is who I'd hire. I mean, it's like Hitler looks evil, Stalin looks evil. Frankly, he looks more evil than they do. I mean, it's just, I don't judge books by their cover, but if I was walking down a dark alley and saw Chertoff, I'd think, is this like an alien in a rubber suit, you know, disguising itself on the planet Earth? In fact, again, we found another shot of Chertoff right over here. You just Google Skeletor, you can find him. There it is. The former head of Homeland Security, Mr. Naked Body Scanner that says radiation is good for you. And they've got to put the naked body scanners into place because they're now putting them on the highways. They've got to break your will and assault the Bill of Rights, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, common decency, and sexually abuse you. This is all part of his sick little disgusting plan as a dirtbag, New York corrupt mob boss lawyer. I think I've said enough about that piece of trash. His name is a profanity. It's funny, in Russian, Chertoff actually means son of the devil. And I was told this about 8 years ago by a friend, and I was like, no, it doesn't mean that. So I went to a Russian language dictionary online, looked it up, and it said means of the devil or son of the devil. And then later, actually, one time I was at a library and happened to see a Russian dictionary and looked it up, and it means son of the devil. I mean, how do you get a last name like son of the devil? I mean, you can't make this up. That's why many literary geniuses have pointed out that truth is stranger than fiction. Hemingway said that it's a beautiful, wonderful, electric world, to paraphrase him, and it's worth fighting for. In fact, guys, look up the quote, Hemingway on the world is worth fighting for. I don't want to butcher that genius here today. He was called a conspiracy theorist when he said the FBI was messing with him, harassing him, and tapping his phones and doing dirty tricks and COINTELPRO. And then they said he was mentally ill and grabbed him and electroshock therapied him and then killed him, the word is, and claimed it was a suicide. And then it was declassified just a few years ago. They were indeed COINTELPROing him. But he's still a conspiracy theorist, though. They harassed him, they grabbed him and burned his beautiful mind out, but he's still bad. That's what's important to remember. If we can win here, we can win anywhere. The world is a fine place and worth fighting for, and I hate very much to leave it. There you go. There is a quote from Hemingway, another terrorist that the pieces of killed. Okay, sorry. We're taping the show tonight. I want you to beep that out. Okay? All right. Okay, good, because this is teleprompter free, folks, and the problem is sometimes I'm not getting downloaded info from Karl Rove like Rush Limbaugh here. It's all me. It's all on me, and that's why it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now let's move to the ugly and the bad. Newt Gingrich receives $5 million boost as he releases Freddie Mac contract, and you got casino barons. You know who those folks are? People like Trump. Good old boys, or good fellas, I think is the name they call it in Texas, or is it New Jersey? And just all these other groups. I mean, he's a total globalist, and he is Jabba the Newt with all his other little minions that have endorsed him, like Rick Perry, Mr. Open Borders, Mr. Carbon Taxes, Mr. World Government, and he is getting basically fully financed by the New World Order. And then meanwhile, Ron Paul is under unprecedented attack, not just by Jabba the Newt, but by BuzzFlash and Fox News. And of course, they said he goes on Alex Jones's show. Alex Jones is really crazy. Alternet said that I claim the government's putting cancer viruses in our vaccines. Well, I mean, anybody can just search SV40 and find that out in about 5 seconds. I mean, that's been admitted since the 70s. And they go on to just say he's incredibly dangerous because in one of his newsletters, and this is actually from one of the real newsletters, not a company they hired to do promo write-ups, as 8 of the 10 other offending things are that he said he didn't write. This is from the real newsletter. It's not a promo deal. And he went on to basically say this is probably a false flag event meant to blame groups that are against the New World Order and neocons who supported the murder of the Branch Davidians. And he went on to say government always uses any crisis to try to seize more control and more money. And he said we have a growing police state in America that will end up destroying our republic. And here we are 17 years later. It's true. I mean, Oklahoma City is a public inside job. I've interviewed the police, the ones they haven't killed, the head of the federal agency in the HUD building, Jane Graham. I've interviewed the doctors. I've interviewed everybody. I mean, the former head of Air Force Weapons Development, all of them. And it's also in the film A Noble Lie that we sell at Infowars.com. You want to get a copy of it and support us, but more importantly, get something that people have died for. And I've talked to the cops here on this show and other shows where they name the FBI people that came into the department and said, well, you were there right after the bomb. If you talk about what you saw, we're going to kill you and your wife. But Ron Paul's bad. I mean, we have the newscast where they're removing the unexploded bombs. I've talked to people that saw McVeigh and other top federal agents who it turned out were in Oklahoma and got caught lying about it, planting gray sticks of butter. And they're like, what are you doing? And they're, oh, we're from the phone company. I mean, this is absolute open and shut. But because Ron Paul lives on planet Earth, he's bad. And that's why the whole system is scared to death of him. You think it's fun to get up here and talk about murderers that blew up a federal building and picked it because it had a daycare center in it? I mean, these people will kill newborn babies and 2-year-old little girls and boys. You think I like getting up here and exposing these murderers? Somebody's got to do it because nobody's saying no to them, and they're destroying our world. They're getting ready to start World War III. They're butchering our Bill of Rights. They got us eating GMO crap. They got the troops breathing DU that was illegal for them to use until 1990. Crazy people are in control, and somebody's got to say no to them. We got the worst kind of tyranny because there's been well-organized tyrannies before where it was just about power that were bad and should be opposed in Rome and other areas. And more modern examples, the British Empire. But they weren't completely demonically possessed and actually trying to bring down creation itself. So there is no negotiation with these people. These are the worst of the worst that have competed with each other in a symphony of destruction and evil until individuals so primeval, so purely destructive, have been put into the positions of global hegemonic control. There's only a few dozen families max, no more than 6,000 superclass servants in their own words. And these people are beyond evil. And they write weird poetry about destroying the earth just because they're powerful. And they probably will do it. I mean, Nero committed suicide. Or was it Caligula? No, it was Nero. A bunch of these people go crazy. Well, but see, Nero couldn't destroy the earth. You're going to let a bunch of inbred, crazy nutcases play God and destroy our entire future? No. Head on, we're going to defeat them. If you just grow a backbone, we can. Let's continue here. Oliver Stone, I would vote for Ron Paul over Obama. He's the only one who's saying anything intelligent about the world. He's the only one of anybody who's saying anything intelligent about the future of this world, Stone added. When asked if the economic collapse would lead to the fall of American empire, Stone responded, I think it's a given. Yeah, at Davos, they're all just openly talking about, well, we robbed everyone and destroyed the world economy through fraud. How do we spin this and even survive? And the answer is probably going to be some giant war and release a bioweapon, and then they'll dance around as our saviors as everybody's dying. I mean, who knows what the chicken necks will do. But the main thing is the globalists are now totally scared. I was watching Homeland Security videos last night of their little private meetings that still get archived that nobody watches, and they are shaking with fear. And you should be. You people are crazy crooks who, you're like a kid that can crap in their pants when they're 5 years old to freak their parents out, so you do it. But instead you're crapping biological weapons and Armageddon on us to show off because you can do it, so you did it. I mean, that's what you are. You're a mentally ill demon who has no business near the levers of power. All right, I'm sorry. I hate to use these analogies, but it's true. I mean, you're like these people that are into sick fetishes that like chop their arms and legs off because they think it'll upset mommy and daddy. You know what? Don't play with our destiny. We're going to distant star systems. Our progeny that's coming is not going to be unrecognizable from what we are if you just don't get in the way. The thing is, strong, good, decent people aren't maggot sickos like you, so they got a blind spot to you. But I'm here to show them that blind spot so they recognize you. And I know you're scared because you should be. All right, continuing, you little creatures. There's no way that we can continue this spending spree. It goes on. The bankers want to get you in debt, though, with the spending spree. So good job, Oliver. We liked your earlier films. Didn't like the 9/11 official story stuff so much, but good job. And I know your son's a good guy. Worked with him. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next news. President Obama's State of the Union, 10 skirted issues. And when you go through it, they didn't talk about the cost of insurance or how the healthcare industry wrote it to rip everybody off and take over what doctors can prescribe. Student loan defaults, he acts like it's the students' faults when it's inflation and a giant scam. Doesn't talk about youth unemployment when you get these big, giant, $200,000 on average, and then on interest. There's no way you can get a job that'll ever pay for it. So it's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. But instead of admitting that, you ignore it all. Youth unemployment, another big scam you don't talk about. Big banks that have paid for you. Instead, you talk about getting the rich, which means, middle-class people, so you can have more banker bailouts with their money. You didn't address the number of small bank closings with the big mega banks by design shutting down their competition, the good local banks that help actually finance local recovery, and that this is a criminal consolidation. You don't point out that there's programs out there are few and far between to actually get any of this bailout money. It just goes through it all. It's an excellent article. Regulator incompetence. I wouldn't call it regulator incompetence. They're all bought and paid for by the globalist. MF Global and customer money, losing total confidence in your criminal system. Banks hoarding the bailout money so they can just sit on it and watch the economy implode. Obama conveyed that we dodged a bullet with getting the banking system under control. It's not under control. It's a controlled demolition. And so that's the basic facts on that front. Continuing here with teleprompter-free unscripted news. Fact check. Obama pushes plans that flopped before. But see, they always say, this is a lie as well by AP. These aren't plans that flopped. They're fake plans to stall you. It's the same script. So Obama, a nothing puppet, takes the blame instead of his controllers. They give you a new puppet like Mitt Romney, as I covered in the Obama deception. That's the name of the game. We have subsidized oil companies for a century. That's long enough. It's time to end taxpayer giveaways to an industry that's rarely been more profitable and double down on clean energy that's never been more promising. I mean, clean energy, the Volt scams, the average green job that pays $35,000 that costs $120-something thousand, and it's only given to your insider buddies. I'm not even siding with the oil companies, but they're a small subsidiary of the big banks, and they work to keep the oil pipelines closed and make sure Americans don't get most of our oil. I mean, you're blaming them and then coming up with plans that'll actually raise oil prices? Oh, that'll really help people. I know friends and family in East Texas who work jobs. Many of them are retired but now have a new job, and they barely have enough money. Like 30 or 40% of their paycheck is just driving to work because they're in a rural area and got to drive 30 miles to work. And they're even buying little cars, and that won't pay for it. It's incredible. Obama's doubled down on the DREAM Act, which is basically a Bush program to pay for tuition for illegals' children. It's a program that allows the 30-plus million people that are here illegally to become citizens. And again, my issue is there's 6+ billion people that want to come here. And if they came here and weren't given welfare, weren't given free tuition, or given state tuition that's half off, then it might not be such an issue. But when they come here and are given all this stuff, it's insane. I mean, we're going bankrupt. Like Oliver Stone, the big liberal, said, we cannot pay for it. But the mega banks are loaning us fake fiat money that they make out of nothing. They're more than happy for everybody to be in debt. And it does something else. When we take people from Eastern Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America predominantly, if the 30 million people have been made to stay in Mexico, do you think the government barely contained the revolution down there? And the Mexican government has thanked the U.S. Oh, if you wouldn't let all these people come up here, we would have been overthrown. Yeah, and who runs Mexico? The big banks, the same ones that run us. Mexico's got 3 times the natural resources that the United States has. It could be an absolute wonderland, smart, hardworking people, but they never got out from under colonialism like American forebears did in 1776. And there was still a form of colonialism with blacks being slaves or sharecroppers, and they had to rebel. The answer is resistance is victory, okay? But instead, our criminal government ships guns into Mexico to destabilize the country and then blame the Second Amendment. That's a false flag terror attack right there, confirmed, and I'm sick of it. By the way, the standard of living's dropped in Mexico. You can look at those statistics. Same thing in China. This NAFTA and GATT isn't helping anybody but the globalists consolidate power. They don't want you being self-sufficient. They want you so poor you're working 2-3 jobs and can't afford to have time to be politically active. So you'll take the government schools they've got. You'll take the vaccines they force you to take if you want the welfare. That's what's going on here. Let's continue with the news. We've got State of the Union, registers at an 8th grade reading level, Politico reports, but I happened to look it up. A 5th grader in 1952 was getting a 7.5 grade or 8th grade level. And so technically you're at a 5th or 6th grade level 2012 versus 1950s, early 1950s. So in reality, Obama was talking to people at a 5th or 6th grade level, depending on how you look at the numbers. The dumbest speech ever. They're talking to you like you are lobotomized jellyfish. He talks to you like you're a 5th grader. I am the government. I love you. I am president. Blame me. Don't blame global bankers. Warren Buffett wants to raise taxes on rich man to give you free lunch. Believe me, kiddies. Meanwhile, Warren Buffett's tax exempt. He helped write the laws. He wants the middle class's money, so there's no enemy left. This is the traitorous garbage that spews out of this filth. Now, here's another report on this. Haven't we heard this before? Here's a compilation video put out by the Republicans. And again, one side of the demonic system will report on the other side to make you think it's within their paradigm. But overall, this can wake you up to the fact that we're going to do our own report on this tomorrow, comparing 2011 to 2012. That it's the exact same garbage. Remember last year he said, hey, you don't like the TSA groping you? The trains nationwide aren't. He knew that 5 years ago they were groping at trains and bus terminals, and now it's going nationwide. That's why he laughed. It's such a sick joke because he's up there like Limbaugh and other pill poppers just flying around on his own private $40 million jets. It's the unwashed masses that get to have their wife grabbed. I mean, in every culture, you don't put up with your child, your wife having their breast grabbed like they're some supermax prisoner. I mean, it's ridiculous. So let's go ahead and go to this video. It's deja vu. They just don't even bother to write another speech. They just mix it around a little bit and say, shovel that same crap at our enemies. And that's how the government sees you. You are the enemy because you're not part of their inside criminal family. Remember that. They are an organized crime syndicate, and only waking up to that can defeat them. Only realizing how really bad it is can turn this around. Here it is.
So whether the hard work and industry of our people is rewarded, where hard work pays off and responsibility is rewarded. Let's fix what needs fixing and let's move forward. Tonight I want to speak about how we move forward. It's time for colleges and universities to get serious about cutting their own costs. Colleges and universities have to do their part by working to keep costs down. And we should continue the work of fixing our broken immigration system. Now, I strongly believe that we should take on once and for all the issue of illegal immigration. I believe as strongly as ever that we should take on illegal immigration. And let's stop expelling talented, responsible young people. Let's at least agree to stop expelling responsible young people who could be staffing our research labs or starting a new business, who want to staff our labs, start new businesses. We'll put more Americans to work repairing crumbling roads and bridges. So much of America needs to be rebuilt. We've got crumbling roads and bridges. We face a deficit of trust. I've talked tonight about the deficit of trust. We can't wage a perpetual campaign. We need to end the notion that the two parties must be locked in a perpetual campaign. We should give them a government that's more competent and more efficient.
We should all want a smarter, more effective government.
So as you can see, the globalists are so lazy, they don't even repackage new bull for you. They have nothing but total contempt. And Obama works for the very same people that fund George W. Bush and all the rest of them. And I know that awakening has now happened. But you've got to understand, again, Obama is meant to take all the blame for everything so that the actual controllers never even get looked at. And it's as that illusion falls and we actually see the global corporate tyranny that's set up that sucks us dry through corporate welfare, you get that message to Democrats or Republicans or liberals or conservatives in your own country, and suddenly everything will make sense to people. It is so important. Continuing on the Obama news, Obama's secret letter to Tehran is the war against Iran on hold. And it has come out that the White House has written the letter to him saying, hey, let's work this out. The problem is that Europe's already cutting off their oil sales. They're already cutting off their currency worldwide. And Iran is already seeing incredible economic problems from this. And I saw this with Saddam when they said, Saddam, give up any time, we'll let you leave the country. And it turned out they had jets on standby to kill him and let him know that. So I think a lot of this is so they can later say, hey, we tried to avert war, because their actual messages to Iran is that they're trying to basically start a conflict with them, which will be a good political diversion. Then they can stage some terror attacks domestically and say that Iran did it and use it as a pretext to crack down and have Obama and others run around grandstanding as our saviors protecting us while they destroy our way of life because of the agents of offshore criminal banks. Now, continuing here, I want to give you a quote before we go to break here. This is from David Spangler, United Nations Director of Planetary Initiative. No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he will take a Luciferian initiation. I remember actually more than a decade ago going to the library and actually pulling up the UN publication where he said that. These people are beyond insane. But at least insane people dare big. You know, that's why psychos, criminals, Hitler, they dare big, they get control. I think the problem of good people is we're humble. We don't dare big. We better dare big to kick these people's asses. Because, I mean, these are the nastiest scum we've ever seen. And nothing but total resistance will defeat them. Giving in to them is total destruction. We'll be back. It's Infowars Nightly News. Stay with us. Yeah, I'm signing these evil 1776 flags. Doesn't get any more out of control than that, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty un-American what we're doing here at Infowars.com. I mean, not only are we promoting liberty, but we're selling 1776 flags. Now that is Al-Qaeda.
Ron Paul's message of peace and civil liberty is bringing people together from all parts of the political spectrum. But to have Ron Paul as a choice for president in 2012, you need to help him get the Republican nomination first. There are a few things you'll need to understand to make this happen. In August 2012, the Republican Party will hold a national convention in Florida in which delegates will officially vote for a Republican nominee to run against Barack Obama. Each state has its own process for electing these delegates, either through a caucus system, as in these states, or a primary system, as in these states. Caucuses and primaries are either open, meaning that you do not have to be registered Republican to vote for Ron Paul to be the Republican nominee for president, or closed, meaning that you do have to be registered Republican. Let's look at the primary states first. If you live in one of these states, you're in a primary state. In a primary election, registered voters may participate in choosing their candidate by voting in a secret ballot, as in a general election. The specific rules and methods for voting for the Republican presidential nominee vary among states, but in each case, your state will send delegates to the national convention to support the candidate that gets the most votes in the primary. But whichever state you're in, you have to show up at the right time on the right date with as many blue Republicans as you can to vote for Ron Paul. In states with closed primaries, you will need to be registered as a Republican in order to vote for Ron Paul in the Republican primary. The deadlines to change your party affiliation to Republican differ from state to state, but some of these deadlines are many months before the primary. So if you live in one of these states, your most immediate concern should be changing your party affiliation to Republican. Deadline dates can be found at BLUEREPUBLICAN.org. If you live in one of these other primary states, you do not have to worry about party affiliation, as these are either open or blanket primaries. In other words, just show up. Now let's look at the caucus states. If you live in one of these states, you're in a caucus state. Just as if you live in a primary state, you must determine if the caucuses are open or closed. If closed, you must register Republican in time to be allowed to vote in the caucus. Think of a caucus as a tournament for delegates. Your county is divided up into various precincts. Each one holds a caucus. In your caucus, people from your neighborhood will stand and announce their desire to go to the county convention as a delegate. You'll have to identify those people who support Ron Paul and vote for them. If there isn't a supporter for Ron Paul at your caucus, you will have to stand and become the delegate for him. Those chosen at the caucus will go on to the county convention to compete to be a delegate to the state convention and finally to the national convention where they will vote for Ron Paul. The caucus system is a bit more work than the primary system, but in it, one dedicated supporter can have the same impact as tens of thousands of voters. Often, a Republican neighborhood caucus will have no turnout, especially in more liberal parts of the country. This is a great opportunity for blue Republicans to have a massive impact. Just a handful of blue Republicans in the right places will get Ron Paul the nomination. Remember, in these situations, you will have to vote yourself to be the delegate to advance to the county level and then network with the Ron Paul people there. There are many in the Republican Party that will not welcome blue Republicans or Ron Paul supporters of any kind. They may try to discourage or intimidate you. So bring as many friends as possible, stay positive, and have a great time sticking it to the establishment. You know you'll like it. Again, here's the list of states. If you live in one colored blue, you're in a closed state and must register Republican as soon as possible. If you live in one colored green, you do not. But don't forget to go to the primary or caucus on the right day. Finally, how do you go about changing your registration? In many states, you can do it online. In others, it's a bit more tricky. You can find detailed information about registering Republican in your state on the BLUEREPUBLICAN.org page. If we mobilize enough people, the Ron Paul Nation will be able to punch above its weight at the National Convention in Florida 2012. So please, for the sake of liberty and peace, tell others about Ron Paul and send them to the Blue Republican page and this video.
And we are back. It's Infowars Nightly News. You just saw during the break a viral video on the web that basically was put together from an article that our guest, Robin Kerner, put together. And he's what you call a blue Republican. He actually coined that term, and he's got a pretty big volunteer organization out there. Just as a lot of people voted for Obama because he claimed he was against all these wars and torture, now he supported it. What Robin and others are saying is, well, now you've morally got to support Ron Paul. And we see a lot of Democrats, a lot of independents coming over and registering as Republicans, crossing over so that Ron Paul can win. And he's neck and neck. He's still got a very good shot and growing, despite the fact the establishment media has said that he can't win from the beginning. And this is really the secret weapon as independents, Democrats, and others that realize that the Republican and Democratic leadership are bought and paid for by the very same offshore corporate interest. It's key to have them wake up and come together. And this video that we just showed you is a great way to educate people on how they can do that. So I wanted to get Robin on with us to talk more about what he's done. And it's just another example of what one person can do, taking action, joining with others. It's had a great response out there. Robin, thanks for coming on with us.
My pleasure, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, tell us about your organization. Tell us about what you've done and where all this is going.
Okay, well, it started with an article that I wrote, I think back in the summer now. It was published on the Huffington Post and some other websites. And it was called, "If You Love Peace, Become a Blue Republican Just for a Year." And it made a big impact. And I was basically saying, look, if you voted for Obama because you don't like crony corporatism, because you do like civil rights, because you don't like wars against people who don't threaten us, if they were all the reasons you wanted to punish Bush and the neocon administration at the ballot box the last time round, then for consistency, if you were voting out of principle, the only thing you can do now is register Republican to make sure Ron Paul wins the GOP nomination with a view to having him go on to win the presidency. And it seems that a lot of people liked that idea, and they liked the term blue Republican, which was what I called such people, those independents and former Democrats who probably supported Obama, who are coming over to the GOP just for Ron Paul. And obviously, I would like us to remake the GOP in the image of Ron Paul, so that instead of calling ourselves blue Republicans a year from now, we can just call ourselves Republicans. But obviously, we've got a long way to go. However, the exit polls in the primaries that we're seeing are showing that the blue Republican movement is burgeoning, which it certainly is.
And your website, of course, is then BLUEREPUBLICAN.com.
BLUEREPUBLICAN.org.
Okay,
Yeah,
BLUEREPUBLICAN.org. We had it on screen up there. We'll put it back up there.
Okay, great. And what I've done is I've been writing for the Huffington Post and for about half a year, and I've tried to kind of put together a body of work that you might be able to use to perhaps persuade your independent, politically independent, and Democrat friends to consider Ron Paul. So I've got quite a few articles. Most of those are linked on BLUEREPUBLICAN.org, and also on BLUEREPUBLICAN.org, which is very important. We've got state-by-state information as to what you have to do and when you have to do it by to be able to vote in the Republican primary or caucus in your state to help get Ron Paul into the White House.
Well, I mean, Democrats claim that they're for civil rights, claim that they're against crony capitalism and all this, but then clearly Obama is bought and paid for by the same interests that own Mitt Romney and own George W. Bush, and he's had all these military attacks on Libya and other places and said, well, it's not really war. Now he signed the NDAA to secretly arrest American citizens and have us disappear into black holes. I think that's really, from what I've seen, really waking Democrats up to the fact that Obama has betrayed them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been making the point in a lot of my articles that the problem here is the system, and the main parties are part of that system. We have we have the Republicrats. We've had the Republicrats for generations, and now we need a president who sees that problem and wants to change the system. Whether he'll be able to or not is a different question, but at least gets it. So yeah, I'm definitely making that argument, and I think the American people are waking up. They're starting to realize that, and especially the young, of course, who haven't been quite as saturated in the mainstream media of this country, starting to realize that most of American life is really determined by what the Democrats and the Republicans have always agreed upon, the presuppositions of the system, as Noam Chomsky calls it, rather than what they appear to disagree on. So, it's monetary policy, it's military-industrial complex, it's the fact that our mainstream politicians believe the Bill of Rights is just a damn inconvenience. All of these very fundamental things, which are really offensive to both conservative and liberal principles, needs to be undone, and that requires a systematic and systemic change.
Well, I mean, a lot of people that have been politically aware have known for decades that the two-party system, as Carol Quigley said, should look like there's differences on the surface, but actually be controlled by the ruling class, so that no matter what the people do, they can't ever get around that. But now it's not just political insiders that know that. I mean, this is just common sense, and there's this sense of desperation, and then along comes Ron Paul, who's always been consistent. Even though some people don't agree with everything he says, it's the fact that you know what you're getting. Ron Paul has diagnosed the problems correctly, and we see the entire power structure now flipping out from both ends of the political spectrum, coming after him, and I think that that's backfired on the establishment some. And the fact that the establishment media has tried to say, hey, you can't vote for Ron Paul, he's a joke candidate. I really think that type of patronizing tone has backfired. What are you hearing from Democrats, independents, classical liberals, and people? I mean, why are they supporting Ron Paul?
I think for all the reasons we've just been describing. I mean, I think there's a certain sense that we've tried the so-called left, we've tried the so-called right, we've tried the main offerings on the menu, the Republicans and the Democrats, and that for generations has brought us to where we are. And also, I think we're at a particularly interesting time, because the vote for Obama was this vote out of a hope for change. And there was such great expectation. So we now are experiencing a stark contrast between what we expected and what we got. So I think that huge contrast, that massive kind of disappointment, combined with the fact that all of these things that the Republicans do agree on are now hurting Americans, both in terms of their civil rights and their economic well-being. Those things together are opening minds to something else. And that something else certainly is Ron Paul, because, of course, as you know, Alex, Ron Paul not only has been shouting about these, I say shouting, he's been actually humbly and quietly talking about these problems for years. But he's actually predicted a lot of them. And if you're a young person who gets online and starts Googling some of the issues America is facing, and you can see this man standing up in Congress 10, 20, 30 years ago, telling us exactly what was going to happen before it happened, that makes you stop. Makes you want to listen to him some more. So Ron Paul obviously now is getting a lot of traction among independents, and he not only has done well in the Republican primaries, of course, he came second in the New Hampshire Democratic primary as a write-in, didn't he?
And I've seen the national polls where he beats Obama with higher percentage points than even Mitt Romney. And so, I mean, he's clearly the guy for people to vote for if you want to tell the establishment, Republicans and Democrats, look, it's a new ball game. We are wise to your scams. And, you know, I've pointed out that putting your energy behind Ron Paul, promoting him, even if he doesn't win because of election fraud and dinosaur media scams, we win by having somebody there pointing out that the emperor has no clothes and that this whole thing is a big joke. If Ron Paul wasn't in there, we wouldn't be hearing any sanity from Obama or the Republican stooges. I mean, these are hopelessly hypocritical, bought and paid for puppets. And the reason the system is so scared of Ron Paul is because he's not a puppet. He's a real intellectual. He's a common sense person. He understands that gangs and special interest, no matter how hard you try to make government be an instrument of good, they always take it over and turn it into an instrument of corruption. And all his predictions about police state are coming true. All his predictions about the collapse of the currency are coming true. Right as he reaches this point of being within striking distance of winning the nomination and the presidency. I mean, who out there can even imagine Ron Paul, this humble but intelligent, informed, true person, next to the teleprompter reading empty suit, globalist sellout Obama? I mean, who can imagine what that would be like in a debate?
Well, absolutely. And that leads me to a point that I made in the original Blue Republican article, which was that, look, if the media are forced to compare and contrast Ron Paul and Obama because Ron Paul is the GOP nominee, then I think, it's Ron Paul's to lose. I think he's going to beat Obama. The difficulty is getting him on the GOP ticket. So that's why I was urging independents and Democrats that would like to see a combat for the presidency that isn't just between mainstream men. Make sure that Ron Paul gets on the GOP ticket and do what they have to do in their state to make that happen.
Well, it's certainly more than a shot across the bow of the globalist social engineers that Ron Paul, despite all their firepower, all their dirty tricks, everything
right
in the book and some that aren't in the book being thrown at him, that he's gaining momentum and would undoubtedly be the nominee if it wasn't for election fraud. It's just amazing. It's BLUEREPUBLICANS.org. And again, you're another testament to what people can do by getting active. Briefly, tell folks your story. You're coining terms. Your articles are being read by millions of people. Folks are taking your articles and turning them into professional videos. I mean, it's another testament to what individuals can do when they have right on their side.
Yeah, if you've got right on your side and you really care about it, you have a lot of passion. And, I'm just one of many. I'm doing what I can do. But the amazing thing about the Ron Paul nation, the Ron Paul movement, is just this synergy. People put something out there and then somebody else who cares about liberty, who cares about this man winning the presidency, calls them up and says, okay, I can do this. I can see you can do that. What can we do together? And I've actually written an article about that too. I wrote one called The Free Market for Marketing Freedom. How people come together like this, and it's a kind of a live and let live campaign where people try things, and within the campaign, it's like a free market. It's not pushed down from the campaign Politburo. People who just care get together. This is unprecedented. It's unprecedented, I would say, in American politics and probably in global politics. This just groundswell of passion and synergy. So I'm humbled to be a part of it, and I'm delighted to have met the people that I've met, through the work that I've done and they've done. So I think anything could happen here. And a point that you made earlier, Alex, I want to agree with and emphasize it. Whatever happens in this presidential election, because of the work that we've done, not just the Blue Republicans, but all the people who love liberty in this country, we've changed the course of US politics. So whatever happens, we just have to keep true to this. We have to keep this enthusiasm, keep this passion, to make sure that the liberty strain in American politics keeps growing until it drowns out the Republican nonsense that we've been suffering from for many decades.
And it can certainly do that if we just keep carrying that flag. The question is, how long will it take? How bad will things have to get? Because when you've got the truth, common sense, true liberty through a real free market, all those ideas are so much better, light years better than authoritarian centralization. And the idea of grassroots liberty and a free market of ideas, true diversity, that scares the establishment right and left. I mean, it sends chills of fear down their spine. In 2006, and then again in 2008, and then again in 2010, we have sources inside Bilderberg, and they were scared to death of Ron Paul then, and not because they were even concerned early on in 2006 and 2007 that he could win at that time. They were scared. They said it's what the youth are into. They're discovering an alternative. They're learning about crony capitalism. It's not just a left-right, rich against poor. It's no, you've got the working class, the middle class, the nouveau riche, the rich that actually made their money fairly, and then the ruling class, mega rich, who stole it in combines with government. Once that game changer, once reality enters the discussion, now everything makes sense. Now you understand. And that's what Ron Paul's been talking about. So you're right. This is coffin nails to these globalists. This is something that is growing, and they're scared to death, and they're trying to censor the web. They're trying to say, we'll arrest whoever we want. Homeland Security documents came out yesterday where they admit it's not about terror, it's about controlling people, and they're going to have feds on every street corner and try to break our will. I mean, it is 1984 versus the spirit of liberty, a new renaissance. And as long as we stand up for that spirit of 1776, it's over.
Let's hope so. That's all we can do. And once we get to critical mass, we will just be too big and too difficult to control. So, the Ron Paul movement is, in some ways, just the most American thing there is, because it's all of those things. It's energy, it's individual passion, and it's saying to those above us, you don't get to control us. It's a very American movement indeed.
Robin Kerner, in closing, what can people do if they're independents or Democrats out there right now? And I know your video talks about it, your site talks about it, but just fire it out there. Call to action. What do people do?
Well, yeah, sure. Please, first of all, do go to BLUEREPUBLICAN.org. Check what you need to do in your state to see if you have to register Republican to be able to vote in the GOP primary or caucus in your state. That's really important. We have an amazing Facebook community of 10,000 people, just Blue Republican in Facebook. And please go to Huffington Post, maybe Google my name, look at the articles that I've written. Think about some of the things I've written there, which hopefully will get your head out of this left-right paradigm, and maybe you can use them on some of your friends and family.
By the way, I do see a terrorist document behind you. You might get picked up by Homeland Security for that.
A terrorist document behind me? Oh, yeah, that's true. Yes, this is where I like to do my Skype videos.
I think there's a John Hancock up there in the corner. That's the Constitution.
That is the Constitution, and that's one of the most exciting reasons I wanted to come to this country.
That's almost as scary as Ron Paul. Oh.
I am.
The rabble wants their freedom. All right, hey, you're awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it very much.
Wow, what a great guy. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Well, another person taking action, and I apologize if there's children watching that we had a Constitution in the background. And of course, I'm being sarcastic, but actually I have videos of police pulling people over where they find a Constitution and start hyperventilating like they found a dead baby or something. I mean, it's so crazy that the tyrant supporters out there have had to just get so ridiculous in their attacks on freedom to where they now just expose themselves as the cartoonish characters that they are. Great job to the crew. Great job earlier with the Nightly News and all the great info they compiled. And great job to all of you that make Infowars Nightly News possible. We got a 15-day free trial going right now at prisonplanet.tv and InfowarsNews.com. If you're out there watching on the web, please continue to support this truly alternative press that is reaching millions of people. You know, the members see it first every night, 7 o'clock, with all the films and the rest of it that are on prisonplanet.tv. But then over the next few days on YouTube and everywhere else, millions of people watch the show every week, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. We're entering our 6th month coming up in a few weeks of Infowars Nightly News. I'm Alex Jones signing off. Until next time.